do you want from me? I'm just blood and flesh and bones. I'm not an answer.
Welcome to Mildly Entertaining at UNCW, the show where the Office of Military Affairs keeps you mildly entertained and more or less up to date on what's going on at UNCW. Your hosts are Joanna DeMott, the Military Liaison and Program Coordinator, and Melanie Nelson, the Military Student Services Specialist. Oh, well, Joanna, we are back in the swing of things. We are like legit back to school now. It's after Labor Day. How are you feeling?
I'm great. Absolutely great today. Enjoyed the nice long weekend. All my children are in school today. We have a weird thing in Pender County where there's just one magical day or two magical days every 3 weeks where all the children are at school. But yeah, I'm great today. How are you, Melanie?
I'm likewise great. Likewise great. It's been sort of a weird day around here. People are like forgetting that they need to wear masks on campus. I'm not okay with that. So we've had some moments, but education has occurred. So hopefully we won't have any more of that happening. Let's find out about our guest. What's going on with our guest today, Joanna?
I am super excited to introduce Jessica Horne, the Senior Assistant Director for Transfer Admissions here at UNCW. How are you today, Jessica?
I'm doing well. I'm rested from our long weekend.
That's fantastic. I'm looking at you now, and I see that you are not in an office. How has your job situation changed from mid-March, and what's going on?
Oh gosh, how hasn't it changed, I feel like. Well, so we are back in our office on a rotational schedule. So like you said, Joanna, I'm not in the office today, but had we done this last week, or if we did this next week, I would have been in my office. So I'm getting an interesting balance of 1 week in the office and 1 week teleworking.
That's an interesting concept there, and I bet that works well for everybody involved. Now, does everybody have the same type of thing? Are you just seeing the same people when you go in for your week?
So there are a few of us teleworking permanently throughout the semester, and then there are a few of us that are on the rotational schedule. And the way that it was set up was really just to make sure that there is enough coverage for maintaining phones and customer service with prospective students. And then as well, always having a senior staff member present to kind of support the counseling staff that's there and our front desk student workers. So interestingly, when I go to the office, I still don't hardly see anyone because there's only 5 of us there per week in an office that used to host like 35 people, and we're all kind of in our designated spaces. So it's really interesting and kind of eerie because even when I'm in the office, I'm still not seeing anyone.
Wow. So maintaining that level of service, but making sure that you comply with the requirements and what's wonderful at UNCW, taking into account your coworkers' needs at home. So wow, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
But nice that you're able to flex that. I know we do miss going into the office and seeing all 30 of our coworkers. When I go into the office in Jacksonville, it's very much the same. I think last time I was in there were 3 of us, and there's normally 10.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, big changes, but still offering that same level of service, which is amazing.
Exactly, yeah.
Melanie has some fun questions for you. Usually I say they're hard-hitting, but today I'm going with fun. She's got some fun questions for you, so I'm going to turn it right over in that awkward transition.
Thank you for that mildly awkward transition, Joanna. So my first question is, and this one's actually very important, right, is what are you snacking on these days? And does it change whether you're on your rotation on campus, and if you're at home, do you have different snacking routines? Have you eliminated all snacking? Are you snacking full time? What are you snacking on?
Oh, that's a good question. And I like the addition of how it changes because it does, right? Between being at home and being in the office. So for my quarantine hobby was that I started a garden. So during quarantine, when I was always teleworking, I was definitely snacking on like a lot of like cucumbers and those like cherry tomatoes. I love those with just some ranch dressing. Going into the office, I sort of have to prep, before I leave for the day, so I can't just cut up a vegetable when I'm ready for it. So it does change when I go into the office. I think I really have, I heard Olivia Cunningham say this in a previous episode, how you resort back to your childhood. I've been eating a lot of those like string cheese snack pack things. So that's my easy throw in my lunch bag snack when I'm in the office.
I do love a good string cheese. There's nothing quite like it. It's so satisfying in the middle of a morning or late in the afternoon when you're getting that craving.
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely. I mean, you could, I guess, if you wanted to like stash a knife in your lunch bag, that gets into a whole other territory. But you could like bring your own vegetables and just like chop them up, and they make like those little tiny cutting boards. Maybe that's what we need to get you for your office. Because I do love that your whole quarantine hobby was like gardening and then eating the produce from your garden. I do think that's wonderful. I was sort of hopeful that you were going to be one of those bread makers, and I was going to be like, ooh, interesting. But you went a much healthier route, I think.
Yeah, I never made it to bread making, which I was kind of sad about.
I mean, maybe on your weeks at home, you could set up a routine where you were doing that. We'll have to check back with you later to find out how all that goes. Isn't that weird that we can have things that we're like, oh, I never did get around to doing that while in quarantine. I thought I would have all this time, and it turned out I had none.
Right.
And for you, part of the reason you didn't have quite as much time is because there was a change in your staffing structure, right? So you ended up taking on some additional duties.
Yes. Yeah, we've had a couple transitions in our office. It's always bittersweet, you know, when people leave, because it's usually for them a good reason, but for us to see them go is hard. And so it was not as quiet of a summer as I would have thought or would have liked for it to have been.
Extra transitions when everybody's already in a transition, like we're in a nonstop transitional period. So that just makes everything even more challenging. So it's really nice to hear that you guys have been able to kind of keep up your same level of customer service, and of, you know, we rely on those direct interactions with prospective students to convince them to come to school with us. So I'm glad to hear that you guys are still able to do that. And I know that part of your role as the transfer admissions director's assistant director is that you kind of rely on your experience as a former college student, first of all, and then as one who was a transfer student. Can you tell us a little bit about your college experience?
Sure. Yeah. So I actually was a transfer student myself. I, right out of high school, went to a large flagship university, and I came from a very small high school. I'm actually from Jacksonville, North Carolina originally. So I was just kind of a big fish in a small pond at my high school. And then when I went to college, I quickly realized that I was a very tiny fish in a large ocean. And it wasn't the best fit for me, like so many of our transfer students that, you know, come to us. I realized that I hadn't done probably as much research as I should have done in my college process. So I actually went a little bit of a non-traditional route, and I moved overseas. So I actually lived in Germany for about 4 years. And I finished my bachelor's degree with the University of Maryland's global campus. And I actually started working for them as well. I had a really wonderful woman. Her name was Melissa Brantley, that helped me transfer and sort of transition into taking classes with UMGC. And when she left that position, I was able to move into her role. And she's really the one that sort of got me interested in helping college age students. So that was just a little bit of my college experience.
That's really cool. I love when people take a non-traditional route, but then some years later, you're actually in a very traditional position, right? So you started off with UMGC, and by the way, we are fans of UMGC. They are some of the leaders in the military-affiliated student space, and we admire them. We want to emulate them in some cases, and in other cases, we're just jealous, and we're okay with saying that. UNCW is awesome. We really are. So. And part of what makes us awesome is that we're always doing research about what other schools are doing to see if we can do the same thing. So what brought you eventually to UNCW? Were there any sort of non-traditional paths that you went through there? I know you picked up a master's degree at some point. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, exactly. So basically it was the fact that I had to move home to North Carolina. And I really enjoyed what I was doing with UMGC. I also worked for a brief period as a counselor assistant for the Army Education Center in the small Bavarian town where I lived in Germany. And I really enjoyed sort of working with that population, and I knew I wanted to keep doing that. I just wasn't really sure how. So I just started putting in job applications. I looked mainly at UNC Asheville. I really thought I wanted to live in Asheville. I thought the area looked a lot like Germany. It reminded me a lot of the mountains and the greenery, and wasn't getting anywhere, wasn't having any luck. Had moved back home for a couple of months, which is not fun, as most of our students and listeners probably know if they experience that as well. And so I started applying at UNCW, and there was an opening for a transfer admissions coordinator, and I was lucky enough and grateful enough to be offered that position. And so that sort of brought me to UNCW. And then once I got here, I realized how awesome UNCW is because of the undergraduate experience that we all work so hard to provide our students. And was looking for a master's degree program and settled on the MPA program at UNCW, which I did part-time. It took me about 3 years, but it was an awesome experience. I feel like I learned so much, and I'm so grateful to that department. And I have been in the admissions office for about 6 years now, and just kind of been making my way through that.
I'm hearing so many interesting pieces of your story. First of all, continuing the kind of non-traditional route of moving home and using that as a catalyst to launch you into something new. And I think it's so interesting. You talked about, sending multiple applications to UNCW for different jobs, and sending multiple applications to Asheville, thinking that, the mountains are where it's at, but it turns out mountains are fine for vacationing. We can hang out at the mountains. And two, the idea that you had your job, you took the opportunity to get your master's degree, and kind of, it's okay to do these things part-time sometimes. Like, we don't have to drop everything and be like, I'm full on academics, a student right now. Most people these days, I think, are learning that they can combine multiple realms of their life and divvy their time out in such a way that you can make progress toward multiple goals at once. And I like too that you talked about our first year experience, because it is pretty incredible, like the things that go on here. And even you and I both teach the transfer student seminar, and we've already been hearing from our students so far this semester about what makes UNCW different from the schools where they were. And I like too that I think, you didn't have the experience you'd been hoping for right out of the gate as soon as you graduated high school. So you created a new experience for yourself that worked out. But the opportunity to kind of fill in that gap for the people who are coming now to school. I just think it's that is part of what makes UNCW unique, is how many people come here with a goal of creating the things that they needed when they were in college.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's so much of what, like you said, Melanie, what we see in our students is that they are creating the experience that they want and building that space for themselves. And that's what I love about transfer students.
They are incredibly resourceful when it comes down to it. Yeah, so I think that I'm hearing a lot of hope for people who, you knew kind of what you wanted to do, and you knew kind of where you wanted to do it, and you just had to keep angling until you got there. And look, eventually you did. That's a really exciting story to hear. So I hope that any random listeners who have popped in addition to our 10 subscribers, we're up to 10 now. I hope that somebody hears something inspiring in that story. So thank you for sharing that. And I'm going to hand you back over to Joanna now.
Far less awkward than mine. Good job, Melanie. Jessica, we have a lot in common. I moved here from Stuttgart in 2017, and I am a University of Maryland, now global campus grad. When I graduated, it was University College, so we have a lot in common there. So that's exciting. We can be successful. And I went to a big school, a Big Ten school, and found that pathway not for me as well. So very interesting. I love it. I love it so much. Just that I have another UMGC grad right there for me.
Absolutely.
What is your favorite part of what you do?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think it would have to be this, like serving transfer students and the student service aspect. I really enjoy the relationships that you are able to build with prospective students, and especially with prospective transfer students when they're trying to create that experience for themselves. It opens up the door to really have a meaningful relationship with them. Even in admissions, I feel like so often we kind of help them through the process and then send them off and never see them again. But I always tell people one of my proudest accomplishments in admissions is actually one of our counselors. I was her admissions counselor when she applied to transfer to UNCW, and she, transferred in, had a really good experience, came back to us as a front desk worker or a guest relations specialist. And then after graduating, we had a position opening that she applied for, and now she's been with us for a couple years as a transfer admissions counselor. So that to me is one of my favorite things and favorite experiences.
That's fantastic to see the total evolution of that student and how her life was changed. That's amazing. Mm-hmm. What do you think some misconceptions are about what you do?
I think from a student's perspective, there are some misconceptions, or there could be some misconceptions that they are just a number. I think what we strive to do in transfer admissions is to find those stories. So the essays are really important to us when we read applications and building those relationships. I think sometimes students are afraid to reach out to our office to ask questions or to connect with us, but that's really sort of the bread and butter of what we do, is try to engage with the students and show them, that they can find a place and they can build an experience at UNCW. And I think from the rest of campus perspective, that can sometimes be a misconception too, that admissions is just sort of out there running this numbers game. And Joanna, you probably get a little bit of that too, just working with prospective students. But I think we love to collaborate with other offices and hear from other offices. So we always try to open up that line of communication, because the best way for us to be able to explain to a prospective student what's happening on campus is if we're aware of that too.
Absolutely. I think what I found at UNCW that's different than some of the other places that I've worked is that if it's not the right fit, it's not the right fit. And that's okay. Mm-hmm. Come back and see us when you're ready for your graduate program, or, come back and see us after you try what you think you want to do, or study what you want. And I love that. And I love our collaboration. We have done so many really kind of cool things recently, getting into that world of prospective students. And I think that the kind of holistic way that admissions finds the prospective students, but also supports them, whether their journey is to start this year, this semester, next semester, or 4 years from now. Just keeping up with that student is pretty cool. And I do battle that misconception quite often, and people are almost taken aback when I'm not trying to sell them all the time.
Right. Sure. Yeah.
Do you have an interest that you would consider a passion? I heard you talk about your gardening, but is there something that you would consider a passion?
That's a really good question. I think recently, because of quarantine, this semester we have started going to the beach a lot more. I know that sounds weird. I've been to the beach more this summer than any other summer I've lived in Wilmington, because it's just easier to social distance, when you're on the beach and away from other people. And I have gotten really interested in surfing, which is not something I ever thought that I would do. But I bought like a bodyboard this summer and have been doing that. And I have surf lessons in a couple weeks. So I would say that has become a hobby that I have been passionate about recently.
That's exciting. That's so cool. I feel the same way. It is one of those quarantine friendly activities that you can do. And I keep looking at the surfers and wishing I could go out there. So that's awesome that you're taking that, maybe I'll do that someday, and really doing it now. That's awesome.
Thanks. I'm going to try. We'll see how it
You've got this. You've absolutely got this. Is there anything you want to tell our listeners about something that's coming up or anything like that?
Yeah, so if we have any listeners that are thinking about, coming to UNCW, we do have some exciting virtual events happening this fall. We have a virtual open house that will be at the beginning of October. That'll involve a few different campus offices. And then we have some webinars that we're doing. One thing I'm really excited about is our transfer student experience webinars. And these are sort of interviews with current students that we will be posting on our admissions virtual events resource page to give prospective students an idea of what campus life is like. So also, if we have any current students that are listening that want to be featured on that webinar series, we're definitely looking for volunteers. I think it would be awesome to have some military affiliated representation on that as well, to talk about that student experience. And then we also are doing some military affiliated webinars for our prospective students that are applying this semester. So I'm excited about all the virtual opportunities and offerings that we have coming up for our students.
I'm excited about that transfer student experience webinar. I think it would be a really good tool for me to use with the education service officers up on base for them to get the experience of what they're recommending to prospective students. So that's really exciting. And of course, we're always here to collaborate and help you do what you need to do. Again, I enjoy this collaboration with admissions, but it's so much more than that. And so excited about what you have coming up. It's been difficult to do the programming you normally do because of this quarantine, but you're really stepping up and making it happen.
Thank you. I think from our office, and just I think seeing admissions as an industry in general has been so interesting during the pandemic, because the way that we're doing things now is completely different than our traditional methods of recruitment. But I think it opens up the door so much more for those opportunities and offering things that we hadn't thought of before. So I've been excited to see how our office has adapted and pivoted for this.
A little forced creativity never hurted anyone.
Exactly.
I want to thank you so much for coming on with us today. It's been a true pleasure talking to you, Jessica.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yep, thanks for coming by. And this has been an episode of Mildly Entertaining at UNCW, and we will see you on the internet.
Thank you for listening to Mildly Entertaining. Our intro music comes from the band Blue Turnip and their song, What Do You Want From Me? You can find their EP, Songs from the Root Cellar, on Bandcamp, iTunes, Amazon, and Spotify. For more information, you can go to blueturnipmusic.com.